I'm Nate Eaton, and today I am talking with Chris Hansen, host of a new show, a familiar show kind of though, right, Chris? But a new show that's called Takedown with Chris Hansen.
It's Takedown, and it's actually, Nate, a new network called TruBlu. So as part of TruBlu, which is a streaming crime network, we have a show called Takedown, which is the traditional predator investigations, as well as some of the other things, as you just mentioned, that we're looking into as well.
I know who you are.
Okay. This is a predator.
Right, clearly. There's something you need to know.
No, Jerry.
You need to know. I'm Chris Hansen. John.
It's very similar to what you used to do with your old show with a couple of different twists, such as a show that's set to come on this Thursday.
Correct. So in the course of doing one of our traditional predator investigations in Genesee County, Michigan, which is near Flint, for TruBlu, we came across a story that really, in my mind, shows the dangers of what many parents and people think, are safe social media platforms. This is a story about a 12-year-old girl who's approached by a man on Instagram, and he ends up grooming her and convincing her to meet. And what happens next is just horrifying and a cautionary tale for everybody who knows children who are online, even in places we think traditionally are safe, like Instagram.
Yeah, and I know that's every parent's nightmare to have some strange man trying to solicit sex or even to just meet up with your kid. You're able to talk with these men that are taken into custody by police.
Well, and you're right. And not only do we take people inside the commission of a felony in the predator investigations, but we also do it in this particular takedown investigation, where we go into the life and world and crimes of Peter Paget. So two things I think come from that. One is, if you can understand the mind of a predator, you can better protect yourself from being victimized by one. But also, I think it's fascinating for people, as you know, having been at the center of many very interesting crime stories over the years. It's interesting for people to actually get inside these cases, and they see things that they wouldn't normally see, and they hear things they wouldn't normally hear. And in this case, the Peter Paget case, this is a guy who from Florida was able to groom a 12-year-old girl in Michigan, convince her to leave her home, crawl out through the bedroom window, meet him in a church parking lot. He took her to a hotel, sexually assaulted her, videotaped the whole thing. And she's so just physically injured by this that she ends up in a hospital emergency room a day or two later, and they backtrack, much to the credit of the nurses at this particular hospital and to the investigators with the Genesee County Sheriff's Department. They're able to backtrack this, and they get surveillance video, which we have from the hotel. They figure out he rented a car, and they also got the texts between Peter Paget and the victim. And it goes so far as to show that he was actually stalking the girl and her family in a Walmart. They're texting, and he's trying to get her to meet him in a family bathroom so they can kiss. And ultimately that doesn't happen, but it does result in a meeting that evening where he takes her to the hotel, and you see this chilling video of him leading her by the hand into the hotel, into a room. They leave. He goes back to Florida, and they track him down. And we have all the video, surveillance video from the Sheriff's Department investigators. They interview him, and he admits to the crime, and you see this dramatic moment where his head goes down, and he tells the detectives that he's done this 2 times before. And so in different states, not just in Michigan. So here's a guy who's been operating from Florida, doing this to other children in different states, videotaping, and then using the videotape of the sexual assault online and selling it. A form of child pornography, very violent, vicious child pornography. And so we don't even know if we've uncovered the extent of this guy's crimes. I mean, he's admitted to the case for which he's on trial, going through the system in Michigan right now. with the 12-year-old victim. He admitted to investigators that he had done this twice before, but there could be others. And we hope that by putting this story together, that if there are other victims / survivors, that they come forward either to us at TruBlu and or to the Genesee County Sheriff's Department and report these things. And if they come to us, we'll send them right over to the Sheriff's Department, because in many of these cases, these guys, as you know, Nate, don't just do this one time. They do it continually until they're caught. And thank God he's now caught and this can't happen again. But there are potentially other victims out there.
It's interesting because I was watching some of the Takedown episodes this morning, and on one of them, the guy says, and I think you've encountered this over your career, where they will text or say, "You're not a cop, are you?" Or, "I really hope that I'm worried the cops might be there." And you would think this day and age, that with so many of these operations happening and you exposing this, that people might get a clue that, yeah, there might be police behind this, but yet they still go and take that risk.
Well, I think it speaks to the drive that some of these predators have. They have this mindset, this fantasy they need to fulfill of having sex with somebody who's underage, a boy or a girl. And they throw caution to the wind to fulfill this fantasy. And I think it's because the internet and so many social media platforms have created a breeding ground where guys get addicted to these conversations that maybe they wouldn't have face to face. They act out of these fantasies that they wouldn't act out without the internet. And they blur this line between fantasy and reality. And the next thing you know, they're knocking on our door. We see all the time, Nate, these guys asking about law enforcement. We see in the chats questions in regards to, is this a Chris Hansen deal? And the decoy says, well, who's that? We had a guy walk into one of our sting operations in Florida who was a fan. And again, this month marks 19 years of doing predator stings.
Wow.
19 years. And when I do the podcast, Predators I've Caught, we go back and look at previous cases. And the one I recorded yesterday for next week, it was a guy who was stunned and starstruck because he'd watched every episode. Yet he's there in this sting house to meet a 14-year-old girl for sex. And when we first started doing this, we merely had decoys in chat rooms on AOL and Yahoo, a couple other places, MySpace, if you can remember that. Well, now with the explosion and the proliferation of social media platforms upon which adults can reach children, it's very hard to track. The activity is more prevalent than ever, and it's more difficult to catch these guys because it can go on in so many different places. The activity is so diffuse now that it's a real challenge in finding it and holding these guys accountable.
Yeah. So over the 19 years, has there been one that really sticks out to you? One of these encounters that you'll always remember?
Well, it's about 100-way tie for first because they all are so shocking in so many ways. Obviously, the people in prominent positions, the doctor, Maurice Wolin in Petaluma, who worked for a company that was on the cutting edge of a cancer cure, the rabbi outside of Washington, D.C., who threw away his life and ended up in prison for 5.5 years because he wanted to meet up with a 13-year-old boy for sex. These guys were in professional positions. And the shocking ones that border on dark humor, the guys who walked in naked, the guys who have had these unbelievable stories about how they were just there to help the girl out. We had a cop show up in one of our recent Michigan investigations, and he pleaded guilty to committing crimes on the internet, but then was charged again just recently, Todd Baracco, a mid-Michigan police officer, with possession of child pornography, thousands of images, vicious, violent videos of children being violated. And now he's facing many years in prison again. So these guys usually don't do it just once. When you catch somebody, there's usually a criminal history there. And if they're not caught, and if they're not, taken off the streets, they will act again.
Chris, have you ever had anybody reach out after the fact and thank you, like these men thank you for helping them realize they had a problem?
it's not a wholehearted endorsement of what they went through, but I have had guys reach out and share with me that they've turned their lives around, and they're thankful they did get caught and it didn't go any further. I'm in contact with a number of guys right now who are entertaining, doing interviews with me for the podcast and for TruBlu. So I think that'll be interesting. Obviously a guy who has been caught, who faced prosecution, who did his time, you could understand why they didn't want that sort of attention. But, my position on it is if you can show guys that there is a way through this. Now, some guys are incorrigible. They can't be fixed. They're hardcore. They'll always be doing this. And those guys need to be locked up and monitored forever. But I do think there are guys who can be rehabilitated through a combination of punishment and therapy. And I think we need to explore those options, because this is a crime where there isn't an effective demand reduction. It's not like the drug problem necessarily. We don't have enough people on the medical side, on the psychiatric side involved here. So if we can show examples of guys who've been caught, but who have figured it out in one way or the other and are not recidivists, I think that's important. And I think it can also give guys who are on the fence about committing a crime like this a way to get help before they do it.
The name of the show is Takedown. Again, Chris, where can people find it?
People can go to watchtrueblu.com, TRUBLU. Watch TruBlu is a big streaming network of crime and investigative stories. A lot of documentaries I have in the works now will go there. The Takedown Predator series. We have a new news magazine called True Crime Nation, which is going to premiere very soon. We have one episode up, but we're going to have many more coming. And there are also a lot of other documentaries by other people on TruBlu, so they can get it on various apps, Roku, etc. But if they go to watchtrueblu.com, they can get all the details.
And hopefully we'll see you at CrimeCon this year.
I will be there, I promise you, in Orlando.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris Hansen. Looking forward to the show.